So warm up and cool down exercises for the sport dog, or it could be the working dog. What do you do? How would you be warming up your dog in training versus in competition? What are the different types of exercises you might want to do when you're warming up your dog? How long should you do a warm up? Why do you do a warm up? These are the topics that I'm going to be talking about today. And if you're just now joining me, welcome, welcome. My name is Erica Bowling. I am the owner and founder of Northeast Canine Conditioning. And I love helping people take their sport dogs, their working dogs, turning them into elite canine athletes. And the topic of warm-ups and cool-downs, but I would say the warm-up activities, that's been a more popular topic, and I get a lot of questions about this. And I wanted today to talk specifically about sport dogs. I'm going to be talking about one of my dogs that I do in protection sports in a sport called French ring. But I'm going to be giving you some tips on things to be thinking about, on exercises to do, warm-up activities to do with your dog during training, during club training, whenever you're training with a bunch of other people. And then also, what do you do with your warm up on trial day, on competition day? Because there are other restrictions. You know, maybe you can't take your dog off leash, or the amount of time that you have to spend with your dog. There are a lot of variables that can change, definitely, whenever you're competing. So I'm going to be giving you different examples of things that I do with my dog. Some are going to be kind of generic activities that you can do with any kind of dog. And then I'm going to be giving some specific examples of things I do that connect directly to the sport that I do. So even if you don't do protection sport, this is going to be helpful for you. And even if you don't compete with your dog, this is also going to be helpful. So if you're just now joining, let me know, do you compete with your dog? Do you have a sport dog or a working dog? And let me know what kind of dog or activities do you do, so that when I'm giving examples, if I can think of a specific activity unique to your sport, I will let you know. So, and give me a shout out. So I know we had some technical problems about 2 weeks ago. Last week, I couldn't go live. So if you can just give me a shout out in the chat and let me know if you can hear me and follow along. I sure hope this is working today. So I've got some slides here. I'm just going to guide a little bit as we're going along. So let me just give you a quick introduction. This is Knox. Hey, Kimber, you don't compete, hopefully in French ring. Awesome. 10-month-old German Shepherd training for PSA. Perfect. So this is Knox, and let me give you a little bit of information. This was, he's retired from French ring now. He's going to be, I think, 9 years old this year. He does, in case you don't know, it's a protection sport, and the decoy wears a full body suit. So this is Knox in the photo, and that's actually one of the decoys. My trainer who kind of got me started in French ring is that's Jason Davis's arm. Some of you in the French ring world, you probably have heard of Jason. But Knox in French ring, there's a number of different bite work exercises. The dog bites on the suit, can bite on the legs, can the chest or the arms. And then also there are some very tough jumps. There's a hurdle jump. The max is like 1.2 meters. There's a very high wooden wall that the dog scales up the wall, and there's a broad jump. So it's very physically demanding on the protection side of things, and it's also very demanding on the jumping side of things. And warming up is really, really important for a sport like French ring, because when you enter the ring, I know anybody here do IGP Schutzen? You know how IGP and Schutzen, how it's broken up into different phases, and you might go in and do obedience, and then you leave, and then you'll come back and do, you'll do the tracking separately, and you'll do the bite work separately. In French ring, you go in and you do everything. And when you enter the ring, like the very first thing you do are the jumps. And some of the jumps they can be really hard. So you want your dog most definitely to be warmed up when you enter that ring to compete. Like, you don't want your dog coming in on cold muscles. Why do you want your dog warmed up? It's the same as humans. Like, if I'm going to go out and go for a long run or sprint on the treadmill, it's going to prep the body for exercise. It's going to warm the muscles, loosen the muscles up. If you're stiff and achy from a car ride, it starts to kind of loosen those muscles, get more elongation. If you get out of the car after a long drive, you might be stiff in the back. You might have a shorter stride whenever you're walking. Your stride is shorter because your muscles are just kind of tight. So a warm-up exercise is going to warm up those muscles. It's going to start getting the heart rate up. It's going to start, pumping more blood and getting more airflow through the body. And you're just prepping the body for a more intense activity. And so your dog is going to be ready to respond. The body is going to work more efficiently when your dog is warmed up. There's also huge benefits of warming up your dog for helping to prevent injuries. So if as I'm getting older and I have aches and pains, if I'm sitting in the car for hours and then you put me on a treadmill and say, go from 0 to 100, run as fast as you can without warming up, I will probably pull a muscle. So it is really important also for helping to prevent injuries. So like I said, they have the same benefits, advantages of why you would want to warm up as humans. Also, we know that when you warm up your body, you're going to perform better. You could be more accurate, you could be faster, more powerful. Your body's just going to be ready to respond that much more quickly. Oh yes, that's right, Charlie, you belong to a Schutzen Club. The goals for health and fitness and longevity. I know a number of people who are involved in the sports that necessarily don't do it for competition, but just for enrichment, something fun to do with the dog, something different than just say obedience training. So I'm going to give you some examples of something specific to Knox and French ring, but again, it does carry over to other areas. So a couple things to think about when you're doing this is, are you doing on leash or off leash? So you're definitely going to be limited if you can do things only on leash as far as what you can do to warm up your dog. And I'm going to be giving you examples of things you can do on leash and off leash. A lot of times when you're training at home or at the club, you might be able to do things off leash with your dog to warm them up. But then when you go to a competition, a lot of them have rules. You can't have the dog off leash until you actually enter the trial field. So I'm going to give you some examples for that. The other thing is training versus trial. Now, ideally, you want your training. It depends on what you compete in. But I know when I competed on training on trial day, you don't want to have things that are drastically different. Like you want to do as much as you can to make your training for the competition to be very, very similar so that you don't have any big, huge changes in your routine on trial day. So I do try to keep my warm-up activities kind of the same, whether it's training or trial. But there are some unique things that you need to consider because there are unique contexts and situations whenever you're competing. So I'm going to give you some examples for that, but that is something that you need to consider if you are competing with your dog. And then the other thing that you must consider is kind of your environment and the climate considerations. So people always ask me, they're like, well, how long should I spend on a warm-up? And it totally depends on your dog's fitness level. It depends on maybe what's your dog's sensitivity to the heat. It's going to depend on humidity, altitude, the temperature outside. So it's really going to be individual for the dog. Definitely, if it's warm and humid out, my warm-up is going to be really, really short. I'm not going to be overdoing it. If it's colder out, I'm going to be spending more time with my warm-up. If I'm warming up just to go do some obedience on the field, my dog doesn't have to be as prepped. But if I'm going to do a warm up for my dog to go run high speed at full intensity down the field, or if I'm going to be doing a warm up for my dog to go into the ring and scale a 6-7 foot wall, that dog has to really be prepped and warmed more so than a dog that's just going to do say some healing, right? So I'm going to use my environment considerations, my dog's sensitivities to the temperature, the climate, the humidity. And then I'm also considering what am I warming my dog up for and how intense do I have to get my dog prepped for that activity. So I may do a warm up. I might spend 3 to 5 minutes on a warm up. I may spend 10 minutes or more, 10, 15 minutes on a warm up, depending also on what I do, what kind of exercise I do for my warm up. So unfortunately, it's not like a black and white answer where it says, warm up for 4.5 minutes. But I'm going to give you some tips and things to think about whenever you're warming up. But knowing your dog is key for this. Okay, so some things that you can do for warming up the dog. I'm going to give you a list of examples, and then I have some videos. I hope the technology works. I should be able to play some videos here right on the screen in the program I'm using. If not, if the videos don't work, after I'm done live, I'll put them in the chat box so you can see the videos. They're on YouTube. So one thing that I do is a trotting or lunging. If any of you here horse people, we have any horse people here? Lunging a horse. When you're lunging a horse, you're lunging them in a circle. Usually you do it with a real long line, and you train the horse to walk, to trot and to canter in circles, and you go both directions. You go clockwise and counterclockwise. And I train my dogs to lunge in circles like a horse. So it is on a leash. I've done it on like a 20-foot. You can do it like 6 foot, but it's a real small circle. I've done it on a usually a 20-foot lead is a nice manageable size. But I also have a really long line. I'm going to show you a video. I think it's like a 30-foot line. I don't use the whole extent of it. But one thing you need to be careful of is when you're dealing with a longer leash, you really got to make sure that you're coordinated in handling that leash. And things that can happen is if it's too long and you have trouble handling it as your dog is walking or trotting in circles, it gets wrapped up around the dog's feet. It can get wrapped up around your feet, and it can be dangerous. So make sure you only let the leash out or the line out to a length that you still have control and you're coordinated with it. And some people are more coordinated than others, right? The other thing, and I'll do it sometimes just on a 6-foot leash. I'll kind of walk with my dog in a circle, and I'll do it at a trot. Another thing that I'll do, this would be more like in training or when I'm just taking my dog out for some fun, is I might take them out to the out of the car, and I take him off leash, and I might give him a little bite pillow or a tug to put in his mouth, and he'll just kind of canter around and do a little bit of trotting, and then an easy pace kind of a little gallop or a trot or a canter around the field. Now, if I turn him loose and he just runs like crazy, I will do something more controlled and make sure he's a little bit more warmed up before he just goes out and runs like a maniac. But usually when I take my dogs off leash and let them run, they'll do they'll trot, and they'll do like a lope is what they would do. And they just kind of monitor it on their own. And a lot of times when I take them to, say, the baseball fields, I might do that off leash and let them just kind of trot around, run around a little bit, nice and easy. And then after he gets a nice warm up, then maybe I do some sprints down the field. So, yeah. Oh, Charlie, I'll talk about that. Let me show the video first for the lunging for those who haven't seen it before. And then I'll talk a little bit about how I teach it. There's a couple different tips to doing it. So the off leash, again, watch the intensity. You don't want to take them off leash, like open the back door of the house and then they're, running like a complete maniac. But if your dog has a little bit of control and doesn't go all out, then you can let them just kind of moderate their own exercise. Another thing that I'll do is I'll do this during competition when I'm warming up my dog before I go in, is if I have to have my dog on leash, I'll trot him around and lunge him in circles on a leash. And then here's the thing is when I go into the trial field for French ring, right off the bat, when I start, I'm doing some obedience, some heeling, and jumping. So my dog has to be in tune to me. There are some sports like lure coursing where the dog is not all focused on you. And some sports like agility, the dog is, very focused and has to pay attention to your communication to it. So if you are in a sport where your dog mentally has to really be in tune with you, I don't like to just go and just let my dog run around and be free before I enter the competition ring, because I want to prepare my dog to be focused on me and be ready to instantly respond to me. So what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of trotting, I'll lunge them in circles, and then I'll do things like I'll put them in a heel, and I switch, I'll quickly change positions. Like I have a ball on a rope, you'll see it in the video here, but I'll heel and I'll make them go into a front position, and then I'll quickly make him go to a heel position, and then I put the ball in front of his face, and we go tug, 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 and then we go heel, do a little bit of healing, quick reward, tug, get into a front, go into a down, get into a stand. And so what I do is I start cycling through obedience, sit, down, stand, heel, trot, front, and then in between I would throw in a tug and a play, and then get back into position. So that way I'm building in quick changing of positions, do this, do that, with quick and fast tug reward in between, so that he's getting his heart rate up, but he's also focused on me. So that is something, like I said, it's going to depend on your individual dog, and it's going to depend on the sport you do. But for my dog, if I just let him go out and just like run around on his own, he probably would not be as focused on me the minute I walk into the ring. And in French ring, even from the beginner level, your dog has no collar, no leash, nothing is attached to the dog. So your dog has to be right there with you. So I will do trotting. jogging with my dog, trot him in circles on a leash or off leash. I'll also do a few other things I'll show you in a minute. And I'll practice obedience, but it's quick change of position, quick change in obedience, reward, tug, play, go back into obedience. And if you just keep the dog moving and throw in the tugging and playing, you're getting the heart rate up. So that is something that I do. So the next thing is sprinting to touch pads. So this I can do on leash, but I have a long line, or I can do it off leash. And this is now sprinting. So the dog's heart rate is going to be higher. I don't do this first. I'll bring my dog out first, let him go to the bathroom, get some water, whatever, take care of business. I'll trot him around both directions, or if he's off leash, I'll, keep him in a controlled pace. Then once his heart rate is getting up, he's warming up, he's panting a bit, then I'll do short little sprints. You can do it where you like throw a tug and then send him to the tug and come back. But I like to use a touch pad. So I'll keep it close at first. I'll send him to the touch pad. And then he waits for a release word. I say yes. And then he comes right back to me for the reward. And then I can start increasing the distance of the touch pad. I always start close and then I'll increase it depending on how much you want to sprint your dog. The other thing that I will do is if you really want to get more distance and you have to keep your dog on leash, is I put 2 touch pads out on the field and I stand in the middle. So if I have a 20-foot line, if I'm in the middle, he has 20 feet to the right, 20 feet to the left. So he now has 40 feet to sprint back and forth. So you can get a little bit of distance and you can build up a little bit more of a heart rate, a little bit of a longer sprint on leash if you have to. But that is something that I've done a good bit where I've been getting ready to trial and I don't want to take them off leash or if I can't. And I have a video for that. Like I said, I hope the video works. Just hold on one second, I'll show you. And then I already mentioned this, you could do also short retrieves. And again, I would not start with the retrieves. I would do a fast walk, an easy jog, go to a fast jog. And then once your dog is somewhat warmed up, then do a short retrieve. And one of the reasons I like the touch pads is how many of you have dogs that are just crazy for the ball or super crazy for the tug? Like dogs, like my one dog, he will literally do somersaults. Like if there's a ball on the ground, not even moving, a ball is just sitting on the ground, he will run to that ball and dive into it. And he's literally done somersaults. And so for me, because of the intensity that my dogs dive into the ball, I like the touch pads because it's easier on their shoulders and they're not doing that dive into the ground, into the, the front end. My dog did it once. He actually came up limping. I was warming him up. He was in the car driving to a hotel for competition. It was for training. And we'd been in the car for a couple hours. I got him out of the car on a leash. I was walking and jogging him. And I said, okay, I'm going to do short little sprints. Short. I mean, he was probably only 20 feet away. I put the ball on the ground. He did a sprint and he came up lame because he just pounced with such intensity on top of that ball and he tweaked something in his leg or his shoulder. So that's why I prefer the touch pads, but you could do like a short retrieve. So yeah, Kimber, are you familiar with that kind of drive? All right, so. And then the next thing is the tugging, and also you might give your dog for, say, a protection dog, you want to do general, like warm-up. The things I just gave you are very general, right? But you also want to do a sport-specific warm-up where your dog is warming up the muscles in the same way your dog does in competition. But you want to warm up the same muscles, but in a lower intensity, okay? So in competition, my dog is biting very, very intense. He may be running down the field. He may be on that bite for a good bit. I may do a couple bites to warm him up and practice my out command, but I may do it really close. I'm not going to send him all the way running down the field. I'm going to keep it close. I'm going to keep it short. And I'm going to do it after he's already done I'm building up the intensity. So this is a higher intensity warm up, but that is a sport specific warm up if I give him a bite because my sport is bite work, right? Another thing that I will do is in French ring, when he's guarding the decoy, he puts his nose between the decoy's front legs And so when the decoy is walking, he does a lot of backwards walking on the trial field when he's guarding and protecting, guarding the decoy, ready to bite. Like I said, he's right in front of the decoy. And so when the decoy is walking forwards, my dog is walking backwards. So for my dog, a sports specific warm-up would also be that walking backwards. So I will do some walking backwards. And if I don't have a decoy, I definitely might do some bites on a bite pillow to warm up the jaw, warm up the neck and the front shoulders. If I'm going to do a little bit of tugging and kind of play fighting with that bite pillow. So those are some sports specific warm-ups. A fly ball dog, you might kind of mimic really close, like a little turn, when they hit the box, if you can find a way to mimic that. For a dog that has some jumping, you might do some lower jumps and just do a couple, a real low little, hop jumping, getting your dog prepped for some jumping. Sometimes it's really hard to do that kind of sport specific warm up on trial day. But if you can, just know you want to try to mimic those muscles. What do those muscles do in competition? How can you mimic the same type of activity, but at a lower intensity for your warm up? So that's another thing. All right, I think the next one's a video. Okay, so this next one, like I said, I hope the video works. This is Bocce lunging, and I think I'm gonna have to mute myself. I'm gonna put my PowerPoint down for just a second. There we go. And hold on one second. I'm gonna make this full screen for you. Well, guess we're gonna canister. Easy. Easy. This way. Let's go. This way. Okay. Did the technology work? Were you able to see that? I hope it worked. One time I tried to do this and it didn't work. Did you guys see the video? Let me know if you saw the video. So what this was, let me just close this right down here. So this was actually, there was actually a decoy it was on a field. It was two fields connected, and there was actually a decoy working a dog. So when you saw how he kept looking over, it's because he was looking at a decoy. So what you see here is I'm just trotting them in circles. This is a 30-foot line, but I have it rolled up. It's not the full 30 feet. And I'm warming them up going into both directions. And Charlie was asking, how do I teach it? Usually what I do is I start with the shorter leash, and I kind of walk with my dog. I kind of guide with my hand and guide him with the leash. And I kind of walk like a bigger inner circle. So I'm kind of guiding him along with me. And then what I'll do is I will, kind of treat him like a horse. I'll kind of go and do my little clucking. I may kind of wave my hands up and down in the air and kind of be like, come on, let's go, let's go. So I use a lot of my voice. I use the leash and I guide him with the leash. And I kind of walk with him. So it's not necessarily like a perfect circle when I'm teaching it, because normally it's harder to get him off the heeling side. So he's normally will do better in one direction versus the other. And when he gets into that heel position, I have to kind of encourage him to walk out away from me a little bit more. And what happens is I start with a small circle, and then as he starts to get the idea, I slowly start to let the line out and give him more distance. Now, one thing that is helpful is that I teach my dog to move with leash pressure. So if I train my dog so that if I take the leash and if I pull forward, he walks forward. If I take the leash and pull backwards, he goes backwards. If I take the leash and pull to the right, he moves to the right, and then, the other way. So what happens is as I'm taking the leash, I'm kind of guiding him and pulling him forward. So he's following my hand and the leash as I'm pulling and guiding him around me. But it is easier if you teach your dog to move with that leash pressure as you're kind of it's like alluring, but it's with pressure, kind of guiding him over with the leash. So those are some of the things that I've done to help teach. But I always start with, I might start with a 6 foot, 10 foot leash. And like I said, I kind of walk with them. Another thing that I'll do is sometimes if it's a longer leash is I kind of walk straight, like he's he's on leash and kind of waving out off to my side. And I'll start walking down the field. And if he's not paying attention to me, he'll start walking and he'll kind of go ahead of me. So I'll walk down the field almost in a straight line and he starts to walk ahead of me. And then I turn and I call him and say, this way, this way. And then basically as I turn, he looks and he's like, oh, she's turning. And I kind of make an arc and walk in an arc with my arm guiding him. So that's another thing that I'll do to kind of encourage him to go further away from me and then swing back. So sometimes I'll let him kind of walk up ahead of me, go a distance, and then I kind of gradually turn off to the side and then bring him back. So those are some of the things that I'll do. So lunging, this is a great way. And like you can see, he was doing like some cantering. So if you give him a little bit of distance, you could do some trotting. You can even do some slow cantering, do both directions. And you can get a nice little warm up that way. It's not the same or intensity of some of the others. But, if you have to keep your dog on leash, I do this a lot. I do the lunging a lot. So, okay. So we've got another one. Let me see here. Hold on one second and see if it's, okay. So the next one is the touchpad. Let me hide this and I'm gonna, okay. So this video is a little bit longer. When I play it, if you can just, I'm gonna be muted. So if you can just if there's any technical problems, let me know in the chat. It's a couple minutes long and I'd like you to see the whole video. What you're going to see here are the touchpads. You're gonna see a couple different things. So I think it's at the beginning, you're gonna see him running from one touchpad to another. Then you'll also see where he runs to a touchpad and comes back to the ball on a rope. Another time at the end of the video, he runs to a touchpad and then I whistle recall him. In French ring, we do a whistle recall. And then there's another towards the end of the video where I actually teach him to run around objects like cones. And he'll run, he can literally run in circles around objects. So what you're going to see in the video is more of a cardio exercise. It's not a warm up, okay? Because he's really running. But if you do this at a shorter distance, if your dog's already a little bit warmed up and you do the touch pads at a shorter distance, it can be used as a warm up. Here, I'm putting some bigger distance in it. One, he's running down the field. So what you're going to see is a little bit more of some cardio exercise I do with him. But like I said, you just modify it and shorten the distances. And that would be kind of a higher level, kind of like a little sprint you would do to get a high level of preparedness for an activity. But you most definitely would not start with this. So make sure you get the dog out, go to the bathroom, walk the dog, trot the dog, do, short little sprints, and then you gradually would move into something more intense. But I just wanted to show you what this looks like, because I have running to one touchpad, running back and forth between two touchpads. And then I also have, you can see how I reward him. If any of you do the two ball game, I know a lot of IGP people will do it. You'll see how I reward him with 2 balls. And then you'll also see how he runs around an object. So what I'm going to do is just play through it. And then if you have any questions, let me know and I'll go back and I can answer any questions on it. So let me just mute myself and make the screen a little bit bigger here. Alrighty. Did you get to see it? I hope it worked. So there you saw, like I said, this is more where I might be doing this to build up a cardio routine, building up some cardio for my dog, but you can see where the touch pads, how the touch pads worked, how I would send them from one to the other. And you can see where I could change the distance and actually make it shorter so that I can do some shorter sprints. So this is something, like I said, I will also do this on a long leash, and I'll just bring the touch pads closer together and just stand in the middle. And if I need to get a little bit more of intensity in my warm up on competition day and he has to stay on leash, it at least lets me get a little bit faster, a little bit more intensity than just a trot, right? So that is, that's an example of things that I will frequently do. So let me pull back here. I've got a couple more things I wanted to show you. Let's see. There we go. It'll be this one. So that's kind of using the touchpad with the cardio, going through those different items. Then a couple things just to think about on training versus trial day is a lot of times when you do club training, you're limited on time. Like you might have a whole bunch of dogs that have to work. You're sitting there waiting your turn. Maybe you have a decoy there for the day and they're going to work the dogs during bite work. And nobody likes to sit there and waste a bunch of time waiting for you to get ready. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll do the jumping and the obedience separate, and then we'll have the bite work where people practice just the bite work. So I'm not going to bring my dog onto the field, go from the car, do a short trot, and then go straight into bite work. I want to do some more intense a warm-up activity before he goes into full-blown bite work. So what I will do is I'll find out who is going to be working before me, and then I will time it so that I have plenty of time to go get my dog out, do some trotting and lunging on a leash. Then what I will do, if the decoy is doing just bite work, I'll say, listen, can I do a little bit of obedience, focused obedience and some healing around you as a distraction while before we do the bite work? And they'll say, yeah, not a problem. So what I'll do is I'll heel around the decoy, and sometimes I'll even take the ball and I'll throw it between the decoy's legs. It's great for control and working obedience around the decoy and around distractions. It's great for that. So I would literally do some tugging. I would reward with the tug, heel around the decoy, and I would say, make some noises, do the clatter stick, make a bunch of noise, try to distract my dog. And I'll do some healing, some tugging, a little bit of playing. And so I'm doing part of my focused obedience with the distraction of a decoy. I'm doing that for my training, and I'm building my warm-up right into it. And so so my warm-up is part of my training and doing obedience and some tugging and keeping my dog focused on me when there's a distraction on the field. Like I said, one of my favorite things to do is when I do these sprints is the decoy stands there and I said, okay, I'm going to throw the ball and I'm going to put the ball right between your feet. I'm going to send my dog to you. He can't bite you because I didn't tell him to bite you. He has to retrieve the ball and then come back to me. So for my dogs, where the biggest pleasure in the world is biting a decoy, it's a great obedience and control routine with the distraction of a decoy. And I build my warm up right there, right before I do my protection work. And so that's worked really well. And then, like I said, before I do that, I make sure that I do my walking, trotting, my short little sprints or my lunging outside by the car when I get my dog ready, and then I bring them onto the field for training. So those are some of the things to just make sure that my club members aren't sitting there and kind of twiddling their thumbs while I'm like, oh, I got to go warm up my dog and let me trot my dog around. I make sure that doesn't interfere and hold up the other people during club training day. So preparing for your turn is going to be important. The integrating with obedience, and like I said, I do it with protection work, but I'm sure those of you that do sports where you're also working your dog around distractions, you can build in, that's that combination of building in that warm up with your obedience, with the play, with the tug, and changing between positions. So you're keeping the dog focused on you, but you're building up, the body's getting prepped for a more intense activity. So that's one thing that you would do. And then on trial day warm up, so here's the biggest thing that I see with people during a trial day is a lot of people don't warm up their dog. And then the ones who do warm up the dog is you wait your turn, right? You're waiting your turn to go into the ring. And so you go out, you warm up your dog, and then what happens? While you're standing there waiting to go for your turn, your dog is cooling off. So remember the obedience activity that I do, what I would do is I take, I'll have all my equipment, I'll have my leash, I'll have my reward and everything with me. I get my dog out kind of near where I'm going to be waiting to enter the ring. And I'm doing a little bit of obedience. I'm doing some tugging. I have, my rewards on me. And then I'm basically, again, integrating my warm up in with some of that obedience routine. And so that way I'm trying to keep my dog moving so that he's not just sitting there for 10 minutes waiting to go into the ring. And then in French ring, you got to make sure though that you don't accidentally walk onto the field with your, tug in your back pocket or your tug on you, because you're not allowed to have anything on you when you're in the ring. So I'll just kind of put it down and then go into the ring. So those are some of the things to be careful of during trial day. Is don't warm up your dog and then just be sitting there waiting your turn and then your dog's getting all cold again. Another thing is if you're training or competing and you're on the field and then you come back and then your dog's waiting and then you come on the field again and go back, every single time you go back after your dog's been resting and relaxing and chilling in the crate or whatever, you need to warm up your dog again. So what I will do is if there's only a little bit of time between dogs or between exercises, I don't put my dog away. I keep my dog out and keep them moving. But if there's maybe a 30-minute, an hour, 2-hour downtime, and I have to go get my dog out again, I warm them up again. So that's another thing that I see a lot of people do is they don't, they'll warm up the dog and then the dog just sits around and gets, cold muscles. And then that kind of defeats the purpose of doing the warm up. The other thing here is the attention and focus. Like I said, that is more important for some sports, some other sports, not so much. And so if it's trial day, I want to make sure for my sport that I'm not just out there, letting my dog do whatever he wants, because I want to make sure when I enter the ring, he's going to be focused on me. And, also some dogs, no matter what you do, they're going to be like totally focused on you. With my dogs, because of the decoy and their desire to bite the decoy, attention, focus, and control is always something with these high drive dogs and Malinois, the ones that, are bred and born to do this kind of work, that focus, attention, and control is like always an issue. So that's something that for me is really important in my sport, but that is also going to depend on a little bit of what the sport is that you do, and also your dog's drive level and your training level and stuff like that. But you want to know that if that is really important to you, that you want to consider that focus and attention when you're doing your warm-up activity on trial day. And then the other thing is know your dog. I have 2 dogs that are very different when it comes to trial day. I have one dog that before I enter the ring, I actually want him to be worked out a little bit. That's Bocce. He's super, super intense. Knox is intense too. But for Bocce, it's good to give him a really good warm up, maybe give him some bites and let him burn some of that energy before we get into onto the field for competition. And he's going to work better and be more focused and more responsive to me. Knox, my other dog, is the opposite. If he gets a little bit hot or he gets a little bit fatigued, his focus and tension just kind of flutters away. He's just not as laser focused in what he does and super, super responsive. And I noticed that in the jumping with him. So for him to jump well, he has to be really, really focused. And he actually does better when he's a bit amped up. So I have one dog, when I do my warm up, I can do a little bit more, and it's okay if he's doing a good bit of work before he enters the field, because he's going to do better. My other dog, if I overdo it or he gets a little bit too hot, he's just not quite as responsive and not as crisp in his behaviors. And I will see that fall out in, say, his jumping of the hurdle. And so for my other dog, I won't do as much of a warm up. I still have to do a really good warm up because he's going to enter the ring and go immediately into the jumps. But I have to pay attention to how my dog's unique way is as far as his training, his energy, his drive, and how he performs best in the ring. So that does affect my warm up. Like I said, I'm a little bit more careful not to overdo it with Knox, and I want to save a little bit of that that excess energy when I enter the field. I want that to be there. For my other dog, not so much. So so they both get a really good warm up, but the degree of the warm up is also influenced by the personality and the drive of the dog and how they perform best on the field. So I think that might have been any questions on the videos. I'm playing this in a couple areas in social media. So if you posted a question and I don't answer right away, I will go back after I'm live and I will answer questions. So I think this is running live in a couple groups on my personal page and business page. So please, if you have any questions or want to know about some of the video that I showed you, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll be happy to respond. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is for the cool down. So don't just throw your dog into the car or put him right back into the crate. Research shows that a lot of times when you stop your activity, the body temperature actually continues to rise. So it's not unusual when your dog stops that intense activity for the next 8, 10, 12 minutes, the body temperature actually continues to go up. So you want to make sure you have plenty of time for your dog to cool down before you leave your dog alone, unattended, if he's been really overheated, or put your dog back in the car or in the crate. You want airflow. And I will, if my dog's not super hot, I will just leash walk him in the shade. And sometimes I might walk him for 30 minutes to cool him down before I put him back in the crate or back in the car. If I'm going home or in between training sessions. Keep your dog hydrated, hydrate. If your dog is just a little bit dehydrated, he's at a much higher risk for suffering from the heat. So I hydrate before, during, after. That's gonna be really important to help your dog be able to regulate body temperature. If the dog is not super hot, sometimes just simply walking, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the shade, sometimes that's sufficient. Other things that I love to do is have a baby pool full of cold water, and I'll have him lay down in the water. I don't just leave him there, because if his body temperature continues to go up, if he's going into heat stroke, that cold water won't be enough to cool him down. So if I put him in the baby pool periodically, I want to get him out like every couple minutes, get him out, let him make sure he's stable on his feet. He's not, glazy eyes, make sure he's not showing any signs of heat distress or heat stroke. So if you do put them in a downstay, put them in the baby pool periodically, like I said, it might be every minute or 2 minutes, get your dog up and just make sure you're not seeing any signs of potential, emergency coming up. And then also the cold water on the belly, on the armpits and the groin area. Those are the areas that are going to help cool the dog faster because of the way the blood flow goes. The pads of their feet, having that in the cold water. Those are some things that I'll do. Another thing, hose or spray with water. And one thing to know is in the baby pool, the water can get warm really, really quickly, depending on the day. And also, if it's not a lot of water, that water near the body is actually warming up. So you might have to change that water, put more cold water in there. With a hose or a running water or a running stream, that water is getting warmed up from the body, but then it's flowing by. So so the hose and the spray, ideally, I like to have my dog laying down in the cold water. But if I don't have a baby pool or an area for him to do that, having a hose, a spray with some good water coming out of it, and doing it on the belly, the underside, the armpits, maybe make a little cold puddle of water on the ground where he's standing in that with the pads of his feet. And those are some of the things that I'll do. Another thing, I don't think I have it on the list here. Let me see. The other thing that you can do is you can get a cooler with water and ice, like a slush, and you can get like a rag or a towel and kind of soak it and get it in that kind of slush ice, and then use that to if you don't have access to a baby pool or a pond or a stream or running water, you can put that in the car, have a cooler, and then having it with a rag or a towel to kind of soak up that slush ice. You're gonna be able to use more of that water rather than just kind of pouring water over the dog. So that's another thing. And then also the air conditioning. What I would do sometimes in between training is I would crank up the AC in my car, walk my dog around, cool my dog out, and then I would put him in a nice cold car if I'm getting ready to bring him out and do something again later. And I'll warm him up again, because research shows that the dogs actually recover faster, perform better if you can cool that body down and then bring them back. So this theory that, oh, my dog has to get acclimated and just hang out in the hot car, he's going to perform better. No, if your dog is just sitting there waiting his turn and he's panting and panting and panting, your dog is getting dehydrated. Your dog is losing fluids. So if you're doing multiple bouts in a single day, hydrate your dog, walk your dog, cool your dog off. If you're going to have your dog sitting in a crate or in the car, cool your dog out if you can, have some fans, have the air. And then when you get your dog out again, he's going to be more refreshed. He's going to be less dehydrated, and then do a quick little warm up depending on the day and the humidity, and then go right back into your activity. So air conditioning can be good. Don't go straight from the field to the air conditioner car, because remember, the body temperature of your dog may be continuing to rise. And I've heard stories from multiple trainers. Luckily, I've never seen it, where they took the dog off the field, put the dog right back into the crate in the car. And even though the car might have been cool, the dog's body temperature was going up and up and up. There's not as much airflow. They didn't see the heat distress. The dog went into heat stroke, and I've heard of dogs dying. They come back to the car and the dog actually died in the crate because the dog actually was not cooled off and did not have the opportunity to have a proper cool down sitting in the crate. And like I said, once their body goes into that kind of danger mode, you get to a stage where cold water and an air conditioner is not going to cool their body down. They need medical intervention. So if you're going to be doing something like that, make sure you bring that body temperature down to a safe level before you put the dog in the crate, before you put the dog in the car. But I do like, especially if I'm going to get out and compete again or do something strenuous, I will turn the air conditioning on and crank it up and let him chill and, reduce the amount of panting he does, and then bring him out and cool him out again. Bring him out and warm him up again. And then I would go back into my next routine. So those are some things to think about. And the last thing I wanted to leave you with is, if you're interested in knowing more about, tips and tricks when it comes to warming up, cooling down, getting a dog more fit, prepared for work and exercise and competition. If you're not familiar, we do have the Elite Canine Athlete Program that can lead to becoming a certified canine athlete specialist. It is an online program, and it's our most comprehensive program in canine fitness. So if you're a canine fitness fanatic, you might want to check it out. We do have other programs, but this is definitely the one if you want to learn more about designing programs, customizing programs. We do have an emphasis on sport and working dogs. We have a lot of dog trainers who have pet dog clients, but we give a lot of examples of things specific for your sport dogs and your working dogs and competition and getting the high level of fitness that you need, and how to keep them injury-free, and things like exercise recovery. And we have some nutrition stuff in there too. So check it out. It is elitecanineathlete.com. And that is the letter K and the number 9, not the word, elitecanineathlete.com. We have download the brochure. There's an application, a couple short little questions. And usually what we do is I schedule a one-on-one call to learn more about your interests and your needs to see if it is indeed the best program for you. So if you want to know more, check it out. And also a quick reminder that I am live every Friday, 8:30 p.m. on the Northeast Canine Conditioning Facebook business page. The second Friday of the month, we usually do a technology focus for dog trainers and business owners, and that's coming up. But then usually more than half the shows, definitely more than half the shows are on canine fitness. So come join us. Check out also our videos. We've got, I think, probably near 200 shows on our Facebook page under videos. So thank you so much for joining. Again, check out the elitecanineathlete.com. Check out our program if you're interested in learning more. And don't hesitate to shoot out a message, an email, message me on Facebook. Happy to answer any questions. So thank you so much for joining. And I hope to see you next Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Bye-bye for now.